एषा विशेष लिङ्गमात्रालिङ्गानि गुणपर्वाणि द्रष्टादृशिमात्रः शुद्धोऽपि प्रत्ययानुपश्यः तदर्थ एव दृश्यस्य आत्मा.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank you all for joining us with this very special guest that we have here today. I don't think he needs any introduction. I think we're going to run to about 3 o'clock with this lecture, if I'm correct. Maybe 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock, you name it. A few people asked us if some of you are actually at work, and if you need to leave, then obviously you need to leave. We have permission to take a few pictures if you need. I'm taping the whole thing and we'll put it on our Facebook page, and if I'm correct, there's little time for us to ask questions, right, at the end of the lecture. Alright.
It's going to be till 3 o'clock tonight, so we have a lot of time.
Oh, you know, people might have a lot of questions. Anything else that we would discuss right now? Otherwise, we just get going right away. Mr. Kausthub Desikachar.
Well, if you give me 5 more minutes, I prepare more slides. So, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here. Well, I'm very happy that the first time I'm talking about yoga in Netherlands is a talk about my grandfather and his yoga. I have been to Netherlands once before as a tourist a couple of years ago, and I spent a lot of time in a street called Haarlemmerdijk because of a camera shop there, because I'm also a photographer. There's a camera shop which fascinated me, and I was spending most of my days there. Anyway, that was only for a couple of days, a couple of years ago. And I think it was last year or the year before, if I remember, I was in Turkey. And there was this volcanic ash thing that went on. Do you remember this? Some time ago in Iceland. So all the flights were cancelled and all this, and I was supposed to go to Switzerland, and I was stuck in Turkey. So I was trying to ask the hotel concierge to see if he could book me on a flight or a train or a bus or whatever. And he came back and he said, well, there is not all these possibilities, but there is one possibility I have for you. There is a guy who is organizing a bus to go to Netherlands. Would you want to hop on in this bus? I said, okay. It's close enough, closer than at least Turkey. So here I was in a bus full of about 40 Dutch people and a few other Europeans, and nobody could say my name. So they all called me Steve. Because it was easier for them. So one of them came up with this name called Steve. So in Netherlands, I'm officially Steve. And yesterday I contacted some of these guys in the bus and said, Steve is here. So anyway, that's my little connection with the Netherlands, and I'm very happy. And if you notice very carefully, I've made it purposely called Amsterdam. It's not because in this bus they told me that Amsterdam sometimes is written as Adam. Is that true?
Yeah.
Why?
Short.
So I thought I would use the same Amsterdam. A lot of people in my office thought I was making a spelling mistake. So anyway, nice to be in Amsterdam, and here is Steve. So I would just like to begin this talk by giving you a brief orientation or an introduction. You see, today for us people, many of us, we have a certain perspective of what is yoga, certain perspective of how things are practiced nowadays, and we have a lot of assumptions and ideas and expectations, etc. However, I'd like to say that all of this has been possible because of a remarkable journey of one man, especially in the last century, and this has not just been a simple journey, but it's been an extraordinary journey. Well, to give you a brief history of these things, because very often we can understand something when we look at the historical perspective. So I'd like to give some historical perspective of Krishnamacharya and his yoga, particularly because now everybody claims to somehow be inspired by his teaching in one way or the other. But you must understand that the journey of this man was a little different than most of us today. Well, you must understand that Krishnamacharya was born at a time in 1888 in the 19th century when things were a little different from how it is nowadays. Travel is easy, things are a little more comfortable now, and when you look at the century, 1888, the 19th century, things were a bit different. One of the key things that India was facing at this moment was this rule of the British. And we had a lot of problems because of this, which is that the British were bringing a lot of their culture and as well as medical practices. So there were things like the traditional medical practices of India, like yoga and particularly Ayurveda as well, which were suffering. And the reason for this is very simple. The reason for this is that if you take a discipline like yoga or Ayurveda, there was a lot of emphasis on the individual taking responsibility. Whereas when you look at Western medicine, the responsibility is given to an outsider. To either it is a pill or a surgeon or some kind of a procedure. Whereas yoga and Ayurveda put this responsibility back to the individual. And Indians, being lazy people, we love to take the easier approach. So we thought, okay, the British are bringing something easier, let's start taking this. So this is how the society was moving at this time. Fewer and fewer people were kind of interested in the traditional systems. Many of them were embracing the modern methods, which are supposedly based on science and rational, etc. So this was one of the situations. Then there is another situation which bothers a lot with the Indian traditional knowledge systems. You see, one of the advantages of modern science or modern technology now is whatever information or whatever you do is easily accessible for everybody. No, it's easily accessible for everybody. There's about 40 people in this room who will listen to this lecture, but let's say you record it and then put it on something like YouTube or Facebook or whatever. It reaches a lot more people very quickly, so everybody gets a chance to have participate in this lecture, whether they are here or not. So information is a bit more free nowadays. Whereas, if you look at the traditional systems of yoga and Ayurveda, it was a little bit different. Not only yoga and Ayurveda, but many other systems, it was a little bit different. Not everybody was taught everything. Not everybody was taught everything. You had to deserve to learn with some teachers. You had to deserve by showing your commitment to practice, your commitment to the teacher, your commitment to this teaching. So one day, maybe after about 20-30 years, you may learn. Otherwise, you will not have everything. Now, today if we do that kind of thing, there will be nobody who shows up. But in those days, this was the discrimination that was there. It was based on merit.